there was a metric absolute ass ton of Final Fantasy VII Remake and Final Fantasy VII news that came out today. Interviews and interviews with multiple different sites that say multiple different things. Nomura is losing his goddamn mind by talking too much. Let's see if I can probably use the best resource we got to focus on all of this crazy Final Fantasy VII Remake information. And that is Audrey. So let me get her Twitter up. Jesus, dude, there's so much. This is the first thing that popped up. So the first news is that there's new Famitsu interviews with Katase and Nomura on FF7 Rebirth, and they're translating it in its entirety as we speak still. Nomura has an interview about Crisis Core as well, and mentions the events of the story will not change. Also, the Buster Sword design was changed to 7 Remake for consistency reasons, which makes sense. And the game's title, Reunion, I'm shocked that, you know, I'm just shocked that we called this ahead of time. I really am. I'm very used to not being on the button with what the hell's going on with 7 Remake, but apparently the game's title, Reunion, is indeed an indicator that it is directly connected to Final Fantasy VII Remake. Shocked and appalled that they would take such an audacious route with this story stuff. I'm shocked and appalled. We weren't talking about this yesterday before this was even announced, chat. A lot of people are like, a lot of people are hitting me up on Twitter lately. They're like, how the hell does Max know this shit? How the hell does he know? I've seen people on forums essentially like tinfoil hat theorizing that I am just this behind the scenes hype man for FF7. And you know what? Fucking, we should keep it that way. In the same way that all of us thought that Gact couldn't show up in FF7 Remake Crisis Core or whatever, in a Crisis Core remake because of some crazy stipulation with his managers or there was something holding that game from coming back out. Like Gact was the thing that was holding it back. The devs literally came out and said, no, that's a bullshit crackpot theory. Like that's actually not true. We just didn't do it because of timing reasons. So in the same way that I'm going to absolutely prophesize and not hold back any crazy information that I am literally just making up, and it's all coming true because that's what would make me happy. Will the game have a different ending? Will Crisis Core have a different ending? There will be no changes to the story. The original is consistent with both 7 and Remake, so there are no worries. And we literally talked about this not even yesterday, that, yeah, are they going to change the ending based on the ending of FF7 Remake? No. No, that's the whole point of the game. You can't change the ending. The whole point of the game is that it's supposed to be the story of Zack and his eventual fall, right? That's like the point of Crisis Core. You can't change that, so it's good to see that the developers are clearly on board. They all have a brain on their shoulders, a head on their shoulders, and a brain in that head. But what about that scene in, I guess, even if I try to dig for answers, you can't answer them. Yeah, so everyone's asking, so how the hell is this bitch ass alive? And he says, what I can say is that the Buster Sword design was changed to be consistent. When the original game was released, it was close to the FF7 Advent Children release, so that's why the design took on the one from FF7 Advent Children. As such, Crisis Core FF7 Reunion's Buster Sword is designed with the original FF7 and a 7 Remake in mind, because obviously FF7 Advent Children just changed stuff, right? For the sake of changing stuff. Zack's sword wasn't like that before, but it's such a minor detail that it's like it's not even really worth talking about. I can't even believe people are having conversations of like why Zack's sword is different. That's a story thing. Like, no. They're just doing it because it was always weird that it changed back in the day too. You added the word reunion to the Crisis Core title. The word itself is an important keyword within FF7. It seems like a word like that would be, oh wow, this is a great question. It seems like that would be the best for the next part of the trilogy after Rebirth. So what were your intentions of using that word for Crisis Core instead? We were all saying this where it's like, yeah, like 2 years ago, we're like, yeah, it's going to be part 2 is going to be called Rebirth and part 3 is going to be called Reunion. We all pretty much were presuming that was going to be the case. So I'm very curious to see what he says here. There's a few different reasons that we chose that. At first, we were stuck on whether or not it would simply be called a remaster, which is pretty much what it is. It's a remaster. In the end, we decided on that word to align with the remake trilogy with the words remake and rebirth, and the word reunion means reuniting, seeing each other again, and instead of meaning like being reborn. Oh man, are you guys just putting it on the table? Oh man. Oh man, he's just being reborn, just putting it on the table, just slap, right? There's a giant piece of red meat just right off the bone, slap. Okay. We thought that something along the lines of growing up and coming back reunion, like a high school reunion. would be fit for this title. Chronologically, the story is a prequel to 7, but it also made sure that it will reunite and also connect the world of 7 Remake. Oh, God. Man, slap, right? Yeah, we've been contemplating whether or not Rebirth means reborn. Right, buddy, but so does remake, right? If you follow the actual story, all of the titles of the new FF7 games are referring to Sephiroth. They're referring to Sephiroth remaking the timeline. No character is getting reborn, technically. Like, it's actually the whole point of the end of FF7 Part 2, if you do get there, is to give the Black Materia to Sephiroth, so he is essentially reborn. Like, there's a rebirth happening. And that's only if you get to the Northern Crater and deliver the Black Materia to Sephiroth. So our presumption is obviously that Part 3 is probably going to be called Requiem or something like that. Something about like being born anew, or coming back, or returning, or it could just be called Return, you know? Anyway, moving on. Here's another big spot. So you might ask, why is Zack heading to Midgar with Cloud in FF7 Rebirth's trailer? Well, the answers will unfold as you play FF7 Rebirth. Okay, so they're likely not going to answer this stuff directly, if not just tease it even more in the Crisis Core remake, is still my assumption, right? That is still the heavy assumption. So with the announcement of Rebirth, I think the part that's most intriguing to fans is, Zack, will the 7 Rebirth story change greatly from the one of the original game? So a lot of people, I mean, let's just be real. Before they answered this, I have been telling you guys this ever since the credits rolled. When every single person, as soon as the credits rolled, not every person, there was a lot of people that, you know, obviously could think forward without being insanely pessimistic about the situation. That at the end of the game, it's setting up for the fact that everything's going to be different, right? Like, Fate is dead, all that kind of stuff. Everything's going to be different from this point forward, and it's just going to be not the original FF7. They're just making some crazy new wild spin-off game, you know? I was continuing like, no, dude, like, the part 2 is just going to start off with Calm, and you're going to get a backstory, and you're just going to go on the same route. Like, you're just going to... Why wouldn't you do the same things? You almost do all of the same things in the original game. It's weird how, like, the very few things that are actually different in part 1 make people like literally like the less than 5% stuff that is actually new and different in part 1 just make people have all these like wild theories that like nothing is going to be the same from this point forward. Like, everything is going to be wildly different. Yes, I think it's like the devotion of the purist is what it kind of is. They're saying that the story's axis is not going to change. The story's not going to change. And the new mystery that is different than the original game, I'm sure that those who played the original will enjoy a fresh experience while playing Rebirth. Yeah, because they obviously don't want fans of the old one to just have the exact same thing happen in the exact same way in the exact same order. There needs to be some element of mystery. On that note, there will be some changes regarding the progression of the game. For example, when playing the game, you might think, wait, did that location get cut out? However, that's because the composition of the trilogy might be why certain places are not visited. Okay, hold on, let me just finish this quote. There will be changes as to the order of when you head to certain locations, but in general, we do not plan to delete any locations. What's the first thing that comes to your head, chat? What is the first thing that comes to your head when he mentions that? The very first thing that pops to your mind? Yeah, Fort Condor. That's a Fort Condor thing. There is really no reason for you to visit Fort Condor as early as you do in the original game, because you just come back there because it's an ongoing quest that you return to, and then it eventually expands into something bigger, you know? Fort Condor is the thing that I think, personally calling it right now, I think Fort Condor will not be right outside the Crystal Caves anymore. I think it'll just be like a straight shot, if not maybe some small stuff on the way to Junyuan Harbor. That's just my guess. Wutai is potentially another big one. They could save Wutai for an eventual part 3, but Wutai, I don't even know if it counts because it's a side quest. Like, you could save Wutai until disc 3 if you wanted to. You could save that. So I don't even know if that's really like outside of the scape of the original game. Like, Wutai is definitely very, very, very much like whenever you choose to do it. It's a side quest thing. Anyway, I think Wutai could definitely be moved, and that really wouldn't even affect any of the progress of the original game at all. But we'll talk about where I think we're actually going to be going after all this, depending on what they say. But we'll see. But I think he's in terms of part 2, I think he's referring to Fort Condor. 4Gamers excited to see how the game has changed and want to play it as soon as possible. Do you have any messages for fans regarding the development of the project? For those who played Crisis Core on the PSP, would like to relive the story, and for those who have never played it before, we made a lot of improvements so that everyone can enjoy Crisis Core. Our team is doing our best to deliver the game, so please wait until the game can be released. If you can play the game till the end, it will add to your enjoyment of not only the original 7, but also 7 Remake and 7 Rebirth. Wow, just more meat on the table? Is that like a giant piece of tuna? Like a 500-pound tuna? Just bam! You know? Oh, so yeah, guys, we're just gonna put something at the end there to tie things directly to Rebirth, to also tie it to 7 Remake. We're just gonna slap this big fat tuna, we're gonna carve into this shit now. Now the table's broken. We don't even have to predict shit anymore. They're just saying it. Now they're just friggin' saying it. Katase saying how he wants everyone to play Crisis Core, which has Zack's entire story in order to fully understand who exactly the character Zack is and appears in 7 Remake, because perspective is weird, right? For a lot of people, and this is genuinely an actual complaint I have about Final Fantasy VII Remake. There's a lot of people that didn't play the OG game. There's a lot of people that have no idea who Zack is, that have no idea who Cait Sith is. And when these characters make their eventual appearances on screen, it's absolutely confusing, right? But in some ways, I think the Zack part of it being really confusing is brilliant, right? Because there is several moments throughout OG FF7 where you see this weird spiky, like big, different spiky haired dude that looks like Cloud, but isn't Cloud. Like, everyone's asking this question in FF7 OG, who is that guy? That's like, who's this not Cloud looking guy? What the shit? Who is that? And that's literally the same questions that people are asking now, right? Who's this dark-haired Cloud guy? They recreated like almost the identical situation that back in 1997 we were experiencing when you first saw Zack. You're like, who's this imposter guy? What the hell's going on? So they did it again. They actually created all this intrigue around Zack, and people can actually now get an idea of what the hell his story actually is. So Nomura says, there are many who have not played 7 Remake or played Crisis Core in the event of FF7, The First Soldier, and wondered who exactly is Zack. By playing Crisis Core Remake, players will understand why exactly those who do know him are so fond of him and why he is special to the story. Zack will also be in Ever Crisis, so when you hear the word FF7, you probably will think either Cloud or Sephiroth, but Zack is equally as important. And I hope that many people will come to realize that as well. And you know what this is? Because Zack is such a small part of the original story, right? He's such like a minor detail that's completely skippable in OG FF7. When you actually find out his story and what brings this character to what happens with him and type of stuff, it's like truly interesting. It's like, it's arguably some of the best plot moments of the OG game, but they're quite literally hidden in side quests. They're hidden in completely optional subquest stuff. Zack's part of the story is hugely influential and hugely important for where characters eventually go and why they do what they do. But then he is gone, right? That's like, he essentially is gone before the beginning of the game even starts. So I think like it obviously, this all comes across to me as that there's been a lot of Zack fandom over the past like, you know, few decades. There's been a lot of people that clearly like Zack as a character, and to have like a brand new Final Fantasy VII Remake show up in some way with no Zack at all, instead like maybe relegating him to like a side quest or something like that, would be sort of a disservice. I think this is kind of like Square testing the waters and sort of like, yeah, we know a lot of people like Zack a lot more than Cloud in some situations, and we don't obviously want to replace Cloud, but making Zack essentially a second protagonist would be a pretty nice thing that could make a lot of fans happy. Fans of the OG and people that could eventually maybe end up liking Zack if you play Crisis Core and something like that. So I think it's a very fascinating call going forward. It's crazy to me that they actually want you to play Crisis Core before 7 Remake continues. And the reason that is crazy is that Crisis Core reveals a giant, like an absolutely giant third act spoiler that eventually is the big, like, M. Night Shyamalan reveal at the end of Final Fantasy VII. The big twist of the story kicks in Act 3, right? And it's directly related to Crisis Core. So the crazy part about it is that they want you to play Crisis Core. They want you to know that information, even before going into the events of the follow-up games like Rebirth that are going to eventually get to that point as well. They're going to get to that point where they reveal that stuff. So I'm not saying what it is. All I'm saying is that Zack and his story is directly related to that shit. So the idea that they want to essentially spoil that by having you play this previous game is kind of nuts to me. What it means to me is that they must have something much bigger, right? They must be planning something with Zack, with our original party. They must be planning something with these characters significantly bigger than even spoiling that big Act 3 thing is actually worth. So I think I'm super fascinated. Like, that seems like a very risky road to take, because that's a huge part of OG7, and now they're just like, yeah, you should know this already. It's like, what? Huh? Crisis Core is a prequel to 7 and plays a vital role in the compilation. As a result, the fan response was huge after hearing of the HD remaster. Katase saying how Zack makes much more appearances than in the original game. Because of that, we want people to play 7 Remake to have a deep dive into who exactly is Zack. That's why we decided to do an HD remaster of Crisis Core where Zack's the protagonist and fans could play as him to see his story. I'm very glad that many fans were happy to hear that we are working on an HD remaster. People have been asking for this game to be remade and re-released for like 15 years. Not sure to ask, but since Crisis Core will be releasing and is apparently supposed to connect with 7 Remake, does that mean the story will change? The story is faithfully reproduced in respect to the original material. We will not change the story as a result of the influence of 7 Remake. Yeah, because, you know, the shit that happened in the old game still happened. The parts that will be similar to 7 Remake are related to assets and battle elements. And we made some adjustments visually to fit within 7 Remake, such as the Buster Sword and the summon designs. I get you. So the Bahamut and stuff like that might look like 7 Remake Bahamut. 4Gamer, I see. I was actually thinking you might add in some kind of surprise in the story. Regarding why we're going to leave it unchanged, if we are able to, if we are to change it, then the differences we have shown between 7 Remake Project compared to the original will be for naught. For the 7 Remake Project, if you are to play it through to the end, you will see a mystery unravel before you. We do not plan to change the past. And on that same note, we do not want to modify or add anything to 7 Remake or to Crisis Core Remake because history has not been changed. Really? Can you imagine, chat, that they were telling us from the very first days of us beating 7 Remake Original that we were crazy with all this Sephiroth remaking the timeline bullshit? Can you? I mean, I'm just lamenting on the fact that a ton of people were saying how crazy Max was and all of his crackpot theories, how we got all these people on board with his crazy theories, and now everyone thinks it's true, and it's just weird YouTuber, Twitch streamer propaganda, and now everyone is just... Man, it feels good to be where we're at right now. What you are saying is that even though 7 Remake Project is portrayed differently than the original, what happens up until that point remains the same. Yes, exactly. It might give you a sense of uneasiness or foster doubt, so you might ask, why is Zack heading to Midgar with Cloud in the Rebirth trailer? Well, the answers will unfold as you play Rebirth. OG is still canon. OG happened, right? Got to accept the fact that we're not technically in the past because time isn't linear to the characters in the story. We are playing the exact same events of OG FF7 again, as if OG FF7 actually already happened, and now we're returning, right? There is a return, or is a remake of the timeline in some way, and not a remake as in the devs are making it, a remake as in Genova/Sephiroth are back to fuck with shit. It's just so much fun. So much fun that we don't know everything. So Crisis Core story has not changed because of... So Crisis Core's remake story has not changed because history has not changed. But then Zack is still alive. But Crisis Core connects to 7 Remake. Am I the only one who's even more confused now? Not at all. Not at all. That might seem very confusing, right? Because, like, if you don't have an understanding of the original game and, like, how the new game approaches the original game, I can absolutely understand this stuff is definitely throwing people off, right? It's changed, but the idea is that we're not playing the original FF7's events again. We're playing them... We are playing them... we are returning to them because they have already happened.